Welcome to the Chasing Care podcast. And on today's episode, we meet the founder of Care Home Marketing Expert. He's the author of Full Beds Forever, How to Market Your Care Home in 3 Simple Steps, and a regular speaker on how to market care homes at leading industry events, including Health+Care and the Care Show. Since 2008, he has helped over 720 care home owners and managers market their homes more effectively. So, if you want to know more about how to try and fill the beds up in your care home, I've got the man for you right here, right now. Welcome, Simon Beck.
Thank you, Gavin. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. And it's a pleasure to be here.
Oh, it's nice to have you on board. I've been waiting for some time to get you on board, so that's great. And just paint a picture for our audience, our listeners who might not know you. Just give me a bit more detail about what you do.
Well, I founded Care Home Marketing Expert in 2008, literally in November, which was about the same month as the financial crash happened. And miraculously, I managed to survive that. And I've been focusing on helping care home managers and owners to fill their beds ever since, basically.
Wow. Big task.
It is a big task, but we're up to the job.
Okay, so here's the question for you. Here's the starter. What do you do when the phone stops ringing, Simon?
Okay. Well, much like a doctor, when you have a problem with occupancy, you need to diagnose what the problem is. And fundamentally, that can be one of 2 different things. Either the phone could have stopped ringing and you're not generating any inquiries, or it could be that you are generating inquiries, but the people are coming to the home, they're having a look around, and then for whatever reason, they're deciding to choose your competition instead. So they're the 2 fundamental reasons that you are having problems with your occupancy.
So to just clarify, it's not always about the phone stopping ringing. It could be that you've got people coming to see your care home, but you're not getting their business.
That's right. Yes.
Okay.
And there is actually another component to it. This is why the book is subtitled 3 Simple Steps.
I did wonder, because there was only 2 there, you see. I did wonder.
Well, the middle one's secret. No, the middle one, if you...
Oh, you have to buy the book. Okay.
Yeah. Well, no, I'm going to reveal it just for your listeners now, Gavin. So if you think about it, if you generate an inquiry, if you generate a lead, let's say, then you've got to send that lead to somewhere for them to be able to check out your care home, and that is going to be your website. And whether they come to visit depends on what they find on the website. Okay, so that, I think of that as like the little hinge that swings a door. So on the one side, you've got a lead generation, and you've got to swing that person across to come and visit your care home. And the website is a really crucial component of that. So really, there are actually 3 steps. If you've got a problem, it's going to be with one of those steps, and somebody's just going to fall through the cracks as they progress along their journey. The other important thing to realize is that you've got to fix those in reverse order. So you've got to start with, if you've got problems at the care home, establishing what they are. What is the reason that people are not actually deciding to choose your care home? Because if you think about it, there's no point in spending money generating leads and then driving them to the website and then liking the website, and then they turn up on the premises if they don't actually like what they see there. So that's the first problem that needs to be fixed. The second problem is your website. You know, does that really work for you? Because again, there's no point in generating leads and sending them to the website if they fall through the crack at that point. And then the initial thing, obviously, is that you've still got to generate the leads in the first place. So it's really a 3-part process.
Do you think that the care home owners and managers understand that, or is it just so obvious that they miss it?
That's a really good question. I think there's more understanding than there used to be. When I first started in 2008, roughly half of the care homes in the country didn't even have a website. So if you mention marketing to them, then it's just like a black art. They had no idea what marketing. They just had the field of dreams philosophy, which is, build it and they will come. We've got a care home. Okay, we've got a care home, so people are going to come and find us and fill it.
Back in the day, how would people have found those care homes then?
Well, it used to be largely through word of mouth. And also, you did have, if you can remember that far back, we used to have a thing called the Yellow Pages, which was really dating ourselves now. But they used to have the Yellow Pages.
Quickly move on.
Well, there were things like that where you could find, if you were looking for a care home, you could flick through the Yellow Pages and find care homes that might be advertising in there. But basically before, it was, like I said, it was word of mouth, and it was very much located in one place. So a care home would serve a very, very narrow catchment area. But the other thing that was different, even back in 2008, was that people used to come into long-term care for a lot longer. So, they could be in for 8 years, 10 years in a care home. So the care home therefore didn't need to find as many residents because the residents were staying in the care home longer. These days, the residential care in particular is changed so that it now becomes, it's almost end of life care. You've got home care that can help people in the home. So people staying in the home longer, and therefore they're coming into the care home for a shorter period. That means there's more turnover in the care home. So therefore, finding new people to fill your beds becomes much more important.
Yeah, it makes absolute sense. So what do they do then? What's the process?
Okay, well, it's quite an involved process altogether. There are a lot of different things that you need to do, which, hence why I wrote the book. In actual fact, that I wrote the book because, coming back to your original question about whether owners and managers know about it, I was finding that I was having to educate people on the process, because you don't know what you don't know. So I was having to educate people on the process. So I basically wrote the whole process down in the book, complete blueprint for marketing your care home, and people can get a copy of that book, read it, understand what they need to do. And then for us, we're the people that actually help them to do that. So if we look at lead generation, there are, you can pick people up at anywhere along their journey to becoming a resident in a care home. But if you want to generate leads quickly, the area you've got to focus on is what I call the now buyers. So typically what happens with someone's journey in care, they get to a crisis point. So the family, something happens, usually an event. So mum may have fallen down and she's been laid on the floor. She hasn't hurt herself seriously, but she's been laid on the floor for 3 hours until the home help came, or, the daughter came along to see how she was. So at that point, the family think, right, this is it. We can't tolerate this any longer. Mum needs to go into residential care because we need somebody to be able to look after her full time, 24 hours a day. So at that point, that person becomes what I call a now buyer. So they're in the mood, they're actively searching for a care home. And typically you've got between about 3 to 5 week period where between when that catalytic event happens to when they actually sign on the dotted line with their care home of choice. So in that 3 to 5 week period, they are receptive to any sorts of messages about care homes. Now, so there are 4 key areas that you can reach them in that time frame. So the first one is what I call a drive-by. So that's making sure if they happen to drive past your care home, they see your details outside. They've got the contact details of the care home, and they also know that it is a care home. Because what you'll find is, when you're in the market for something, your brain becomes attuned to messages about that thing. You may have passed by that care home 1,000 times before on your journey to work, but yet never noticed it. But yet when you're looking for a care home, all of a sudden your brain will identify, that's a care home. I can see the sign there. So it's important to have that signage outside so that they can find you. The second thing is recommendations and referrals. And in our industry, they are absolutely crucial. And that can be So friends and family, obviously, but it also is health and social care professionals, legal professionals, people within the healthy industry, such as, chemists and doctors and so on. So those referrals and introductions can come from anywhere in there. The other two are what we would traditionally class as marketing. So they are search marketing and interruption marketing. Search marketing is when somebody literally gets on their computer and starts searching for a care home. And that's the key moment that you want to introduce them to your care home. But like I said before, interruption marketing means that within that 3 to 5 week window, they will still be receptive to other messages while they are actually doing other things. So they might be reading the newspaper, for example, and they might see an advert for your care home in the newspaper. And whereas normally they would just flick past that or not even noticed it, it's going to become of interest. So they will, cut it out or make a note of it, whatever. Okay. But the most important one out of those 4 is search marketing. So the time when somebody is their absolute hottest prospect, so to speak, is when they are actively on their computer searching for a care home. And you can imagine they would put them in some sort of search term to Google or Bing, like, care homes in whatever town that they are in, and they will get a results page. And it's crucially important that you are on that results page, that you are as high as possible at the top of the results, and also that you are on there as frequently as possible, because that page is broken up into 4 different sections. At the top, you've got ads, which I'll come to in a second. Underneath that, you've got the map section with 3 local businesses highlighted. Underneath that, you've got what's called the organic search, and I break that down into 2 because you've always got carehome.co.uk or a similar sort of directory at the top of those results. They kind of dominate, but you also have care homes and other care directories and other sort of web properties that Google thinks are relevant to your search underneath there. So people are fundamentally lazy, so they won't scroll. They will only scroll down that page as far enough to find the information that they want. And Google is very smart, and they know this, so that if you look at the top of a results page for any sort of search term that you put in there that's got some sort of what we call commercial intent, in other words, somebody might buy something or be looking for a service, you'll find 3 or 4 ads at the top of there. And you can tell that they're ads because they've got a little square next to them that says AD in, which is obviously for ads.
Yeah.
So they are what's called pay-per-click ads. And the way that process works is that you tell Google that you want your ad to appear when somebody searches for whatever term it is, let's say care homes in Folkestone. You write your ad for care home in Folkestone. And then when somebody types care home in Folkestone, your ad appears in one of those 4 positions. And if people like your ad, they can click on it, and that will take them through to your website. Okay. Now, you only ever pay anything, although your ad may be displayed multiple times, you only actually pay when somebody clicks on your ad and goes through to your website. So that's the most cost-effective advertising that you can possibly get, because you are displaying your ad in front of someone who is actively searching for a care home. They like what they see in your ad, and then they go through to the next step that our hinge, which was the website, to take on the next step in the process. So that beats, hands down, that beats any other form of advertising that you can possibly have.
Can I ask, in terms of Google Ads,
Mm-hmm.
Is it expensive?
The cost per click can seem expensive if you just look at it in isolation. So you can pay anything from 50 pence per click up to, it could be as much as, it depends. If you were bidding on insurance, for example, like car insurance, they typically can pay up to 30 to 40 pounds for a click. But in the care industry, if you're paying anything from 50 pence to £1.50 up to £2, that's a sort of typical thing.
Okay,
Now, if
so
you think,
it's not very expensive, really, but my guess is that it's okay to have somebody clicking on an advert, which might look lovely, and then it goes somewhere, you say the website, but if the website is a shocker, then that's a waste of money, isn't it?
you've hit the nail on the head there,
Yeah.
Gavin. Yes, that's absolutely correct. There's no point in doing Google ads or any sort of advertising until you've got your website is absolutely fantastic. Would you like me to tell you some sort of key things that you need to look out for in your website?
Well, I'm sure the listeners would want to know. If it's free advice from you today, Simon, go for it. Yeah.
Okay, well, we've been building websites, back since 2008, and over that time, we've tested loads and loads of different things, different formats, and so on. So the most important things on your website are, number one, beautiful quality images. And I'm not talking about stock images here that you can buy and get a license for. I'm talking about real images of your care home. So number one tip is to get a professional photographer to come and take professional photographs of your care home. They sell it better than anything else. And I would also include in that category videos as well. Videos are becoming much more important these days because people consume the videos on their phones and so on a lot more than they used to. So a fantastic video on there as well really helps to sell the home. So number one is images. Number two, which is bitterly neglected, is sales copy. And what I mean by sales copy is you have to really sell your care home on there. Some people like to consume things visually. Some people like to listen to stuff, and some people like to read stuff. And you've got to cater for all those different people. When you're looking at the people who read stuff, you've really got to tell a story of your care home. You've got to point out the unique features of your care home compared to your competition. And you've really got to sell it and sell the benefits of it. And you've also got to talk to the person. The biggest problem I see is that people tend to write in the third person. So that, they talk about our residents and such like. Imagine you're having a conversation just like we are now. If I were telling you about a care home, I would be talking to you in the first person like we are now, not the third person. Mm. So just when you're writing copy for your website, you've just got to imagine that you're sat there talking to a mate in the pub and they ask you, oh, do you know a decent care home? And you talk to them. The writing on your website should be the same way that you would talk to them. A really friendly message addressed directly to that person as though they were sat in front of you. But it's got to be crafted into really strong, compelling messages. That's number two. Number three is proof. There are actually 5 key questions that a person who is looking for a care home will have in their mind when they get to your website. And I'm going to tease your listeners because I'm only going to reveal what number 5 is. If they want any more, they'll have to seek out our website. Yeah. But number 5 is actually proof, okay? And what I mean by that is that one of the key questions that they have is, how do I know that my loved one is going to be looked after at this care home? Care homes have had a bad rep over the years because it's only the really, really bad ones that get publicized.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so people don't want to go into a care home, even though in actual fact that quite often people have a much better life when they do go into a care home, which is another thing that you need to illustrate in your sales copy. But before you get to that, they've got this question in their mind: how do I know that Dad is going to be well looked after at this care home?
Brilliant. So let's move on, if I may, because
yeah, sure.
We've talked at some length, and as you said, you've teased people into thinking about how they should be marketing. Let's think about when they've got to the point where they've gone, actually, I trust the website, I trust what I'm seeing, I do want to get there and go and have a look because I need somewhere to go today, and they pick up the phone. So what happens next? What are the problems that we talk about people visiting but then disappearing elsewhere? So what's the story there?
Well, usually that is because either they've had some sort of bad experience with a staff member and they haven't done a very good job of selling the care home, or it's because there is something fundamentally wrong with the infrastructure of your care home. It just doesn't look very nice. If we take the staff element first of all, that starts with telephone calls. You need to train your staff on how to take calls and how to deal with inquiries. And we actually provide what's called call tracking, which is where the call, if you've ever had that situation where you call somewhere up and they say calls are being recorded for training and monitoring purposes, that basically means your call is being recorded. And when you listen to those calls back, you get some really shocking things that happen. Yeah. that staff say. They'll tell people that there's no vacancies when you've got 5-bed vacancies, or we don't do this sort of care or whatever. So call tracking really highlights that, and it highlights how your staff need to be trained and which members of staff need training. And the same thing applies when somebody actually comes to the care home. There is a process that you need to follow, a way of doing things, and your staff need to be trained properly in that process. So how do they greet people when they get there? Where do they take them? Then they must ask them questions about what their requirements are. Selling is not telling, okay? You've got to ask people questions and find out what their needs are before you can actually show how your care home can fulfill those needs.
Oh, that's a very valid point. So what you're doing is making sure your staff are asking quality questions about the needs. Yes. Of the individual, rather than just doing a blanket corporate sales pitch.
Absolutely. I'll give you a core example. So if we ask the question, how would you describe mum or dad? Are they the life and soul of the party, or do they like to keep themselves to themselves? Depending on what the answer is to that question, you would highlight different things going around the care home. So if they said, oh, the life and soul of the party, they love joining in stuff, you would then show them all the sorts of activities that go on the care home, how they can get involved, the community element of it, come to the arts and crafts thing and join in with everybody else. And the opposite of that is also true. If they don't like joining in with stuff, you can point out to them, well, they can stay in the room if they want to, and they can, watch the TV, and they'll still be looked after. We can bring them the meals, or there are lots of different places around the care home where they can go and sit quietly and read and just be undisturbed. Now, if you didn't ask that question and you go around pointing out all the wonderful activities and how mum and dad are going to get bombarded with these activities, and all the time you're thinking, as the person who's been taken around, oh my God, mum or dad is going to hate this, because they don't like getting involved in all sorts of activities like that. Until you ask those questions, those open-ended questions at the start, you don't know what to say and how to handle that inquiry.
Simon, I think that bit of advice that you've just given there is worth anybody who's listening to this podcast paying you 50 quid.
Thank you.
Well, it's a no-brainer.
I'm happy to take donations.
Yeah, well, we'll put people your way at the end of it, but
yeah,
I mean, it's just as fundamentally right, isn't it, that you're actually delivering the service for the need, rather than just saying this is our service, full stop, this is what we do. And I wouldn't want to be taken around everywhere in a care home if I wasn't interested in parts of it. So why would you do the same tour for absolutely everybody? It doesn't make sense, does it?
It doesn't. And to be honest, it's one of my bugbears of our industry, in that we expect care staff who are paid a wage or very little above a wage to know these things. Fundamentally, we expect them to be able to greet somebody at the door, and if the manager's not available, or the deputy manager, to actually do that job of doing that tour themselves. And we give them no training whatsoever. So if you think about it, a place in a care home can be worth 50 grand, 100 grand, the lifetime value of that person in your care home.
Yeah.
So you can't entrust that level of sale to someone who has not been properly trained. It just is commercial suicide, basically. And that is one of the key reasons that people go on to somewhere else where they have been trained. They get a much better experience. It feels more personal to them. And they feel like, you know, they're being helped to buy rather than sold. So that's the first thing that you need to take into account. Get your staff trained properly. And then the second thing is that you become snowblind when you visit your care home on a regular basis or you work in it. You become oblivious to its imperfections. And it's the same sort of thing when my mother-in-law comes to our house. All of a sudden, I'm very, very conscious of every little sort of mark or imperfection in the house because I know she's going to spot it. So you don't notice those things on a day-to-day basis. They only become apparent to you when you sort of take yourself out of that. So what you need to do is get a fresh pair of eyes on your care home. And one of the things I recommend to do that is to do like a mystery shopper exercise. Okay, so you can get one of your friends to do this. Obviously, you can't do it yourself, but you can get one of your friends to come down, imagine like they are looking for a care home, and get taken around the care home and do the tour, and then get their feedback. What did they notice about it that you aren't noticing?
Is your mother-in-law available for this?
We should start hiring her out.
Sideline. Extra
Yeah,
income.
possibly. Yeah, so you must do that. You can also, I mean, we offer mystery shopper exercises. We do those as professionals, and we come up with a complete report, which, you know, sort of grades the care home in 20 different areas. We do it on like a traffic light system so that you can see, you know, green is okay, well, green is fine, red is danger signs that you need to fix straight away, and amber is something that you can then move on to after you've done the reds. So it's worthwhile doing that sort of thing with some professional if you can afford it, but you can still get, you know, a friend to come along and do it for you. And this is something that you should do to your competition as well. You should mystery shop them. Go down there and pose and see what they're offering and how they present things, and then compare the differences of the two homes and see what advantages they have that they're pushing that you don't, and vice versa, then see what you can present as well.
Now, listening to what you're saying today, although your book talks about 3 simple steps, it's not 3 simple steps, is it? It's a process from beginning to end that probably needs to be repeated consistently. But unless you know what those steps are, you won't know what you should be doing. And that's where people like you step in to support these businesses.
Yes. I see my job as being like Shrek. So let me explain that. One of my favorite movies is Shrek. And in that, Shrek and Donkey go off on a quest to rescue the princess. And in order to rescue the princess, she's stranded on an island in a castle, which is surrounded by molten lava. And to get across to the island, they've got to cross this rickety, rackety bridge. So which is swaying dangerously like this. It's got rotten pieces of wood. And at any point along that bridge, they can, if they do a misstep, they can fall through and be consumed by the molten lava below. And I think that journey is very much like the journey that your person takes from that moment where they wake up in the morning thinking, I need to find a care home, to the point that they sign on the dotted line. They are crossing that bridge, and there's lots and lots of places that they can fall through the cracks and into the lava. So my job as a marketer is to make sure that you've got a really solid bridge that has no gaps in it, that is really solid pieces of wood all the way along there, so that they can just go across there seamlessly, as quickly and as easily as possible from one side to the other, and, you know, sign on the dotted line effectively. So that's kind of what we do. We fix the bridges.
I like the analogy, and we've come to the end of our time. It's been fascinating. I'm sure that our listeners today have got a little aspects of what they should be thinking about if they're not absolutely sure about their journey and they want to get in touch with you, Simon, to find out more. Where do they find you?
Well, they can find me at carehomemarketingexpert.com. And if they want to get a copy of the book, which, as I said, is a complete blueprint, they can get that from carehomemarketingbook.com, or maybe .co.uk. So
brilliant. Thank you very much for your time today, and no doubt you'll be back on our show sometime in the future. But for the meantime, Simon Beck, thank you once again.
Thank you, Gavin. It's been an absolute pleasure.